Welcome to the Penny Stamps Distinguished Speaker Series. Today we present the exquisite, intuitive, inimitable artist Kiki Smith. So excited about that because it's been a number of years of conversation in the making to have her come here. I want to thank our partners for their support of today's program, the University of Michigan Museum of Art, or UMA, the Chelsea River Gallery, and Michigan Radio 91.7 FM. Kiki's visit here is not just here for this talk. Kiki has been here in Ann Arbor since Tuesday. She's been up on North Campus working in the print studio on a set of prints, which has created quite a stir and has been a truly profound experience, I hope, for some of our very, very lucky students who have been able to engage with her in her creative process. So I'm sure you'll hear more about this. I have just 3 announcements for you today, and please pay close attention because we have upcoming specials in the program which are outside of our regular schedule. This Saturday, we're going to be in Detroit at Wasserman Projects, which is in the gallery in Eastern Market. We are hosting a performance by performance artist, poet, and theater maker Penny Arcade. This is her show, Longing Lasts Longer. This is a double award winner at the Edinburgh Festival, if you need any more impetus to go. Penny Arcade, she's an original member of New York's seminal rock and roll political theater, the Playhouse of the Ridiculous, and she was a teenage superstar in Andy Warhol's Factory. So again, not to be missed, this will be this Saturday at Wasserman Projects in Detroit's Eastern Market at 7 p.m. Then next Tuesday, October 24th at 5:30, at the museum, our dear University of Michigan Museum of Art here in Ann Arbor, Helmut Stern Auditorium, we will present Detroit native and a Stamp School alumni, the painter Jason Yates. This is also in partnership with Wasserman Projects, as they are currently hosting an exhibition of Jason's work. So you can see the exhibition on Saturday when you go to see Penny Arcade's performance, and then join us at the museum here on Tuesday evening at 5:30 to hear Jason Yates speak on his practice. And then next Thursday, we won't be here. We are actually taking a hiatus. This was a request from the president of the university because President Schlizzle next Thursday is hosting his final bicentennial colloquium called the Campus of the Future. So they will have a showcase during the day. They've invited students to make design projects about what does the campus of the future look like. All of these projects will be on display at the Duderstadt that day, and then there will be the competition finale, because there will be some hefty awards given out at this finale, which will take place with a panel of some professional designers, which for some reason I couldn't find out who they have brought in, but they have brought in some people that are leaders in design, apparently. And this will take place at the Power Center at 4:30 next Thursday. So we won't be here, but we will have events Saturday and Tuesday. So today we will have our regular Q&A, not here, but in the screening room, which exit the theater, go left down the hall. You'll find the screening room theater there if you want to meet Kiki and ask her a few questions. Join us there directly after the talk here. And now for a proper introduction of our guest, please welcome a master printmaker himself, Stamp School professor Andy Poskovich.
Good evening, everybody. As Tina said, we have been busy for the past 3 days working with Kiki, and I'm sure you'll find through the grapevine all the good things that have been happening at the school, working from 8 a.m. till midnight every day for the past 3 days. So a lot to share and a lot to see. Kiki Smith has stated that I like that feeling when you're making art, that you're taking the energy out of your body and putting it into a physical object. I like things that are labor intensive. You make a little thing and another little thing and another little thing, and eventually you see a possibility. Artist Kiki Smith has been known for her multidisciplinary practice in sculpture, printmaking, photography, drawing, and textiles, relating to the human condition and the natural world. A daughter of James Lawrence Smith, an American actress and opera singer who was part of the 1950s New York City art scene, and Tony Smith, an American minimalist sculptor and a noted theorist on art. Kiki Smith was born in Nuremberg, Germany, where her mother performed opera. Kiki Smith's works have been the subject of numerous solo exhibitions worldwide, including over 30 museum exhibitions. Her work has been featured at 5 Venice Biennales, including the 2017 edition, one of the most beautiful shows as part of the Giardini display. Kiki Smith is a member of the American Academy of Arts and Letters and the American Academy of Arts and Letters and Sciences, and in 2017 was awarded the Honorary Royal Academician by the Royal Academy of Arts, London. Previously, Smith was recognized by Time magazine as one of the Time 100, the people who shape our world. Other noted awards include Skowhegan Medal for Sculpture in 2000, the 2009 Edward MacDowell Medal, the 2010 Nelson A. Rockefeller Award, the 2013 U.S. Department of State Medal of Arts, and the 2016 Lifetime Achievement Award from the International Sculpture Center. She teaches at New York University and Columbia University in New York City. One thing that has always been on the mind of an artist maker such as myself and someone who works with young people, artists, designers, has been Kiki's approach to making and especially prints. One quote that has always lingered on the back of my mind as I have approached this field has been her statement about prints, which, according to Kiki Smith, mimic what we are as humans. We are all the same, and yet everyone is different. I also think there is a spiritual power in repetition, a devotional quality like saying rosaries. Kiki Smith has been an artist I've admired, an artist friend, an artist that I've exhibited with, someone that has included my own work in exhibitions. The whole idea that she would someday come here to Ann Arbor, Michigan, to work with our students has been a dream ever since I came to STAMS. And I'm so thrilled that we have been in the studio for the past 3 days, making everybody really work harder than I have seen anybody work in my classes. And that has been one of the pivots that will guide me in the years to come as I approach things and as we all unearth what has been buried here in a very good and constructive way. So please help me welcome an artist, one of the finest out there, Kiki Smith. Thank you.
Hi. 1 second. I have to try to get this together a little bit because I'm on a time schedule. They told me not to talk too long. So, can the lights go down a little bit, or you don't do that? Is that really? It's like that the whole time? Okay. It's like confession or something because I can't see anything whatsoever. Okay. So. I'm very happy to have been invited here, and I'm really, really privileged and honored to be able to work with Andy and the students the last days on printmaking. And so we've just been generating as many things as we possibly could, and then I have no idea what, how we'll keep it together, but we'll figure it out. But anyway, so I don't know. I suppose, that this, I tried to put together, I asked my assistant to put together slides or images that relate to printmaking because I like printmaking a lot, and to me, I thought most of my work really is generating out of printmaking, and that I've used it in all different ways, and I've been attracted to it in different ways. And I could say, like, on one hand, it comes out, my father was the sculptor Tony Smith, who made the Grace Hooper in front of the Detroit Art Institute, and they were all comprised of octahedrons and tetrahedrons. I brought 400 images, so I'll just flip through them. I just like to do that to scare people. But so he made octahedrons and tetrahedrons, and at a certain point, this paper company cut them all out, and we would sit and put them together. So it was this thing about paper and using paper in a physical manner, and then sort of the repetition of that. And so that's maybe one strain of why I like printmaking. And there are probably others, but a lot of the images that I've used, I've gone over and over and over again, like making them in sculpture and making them in paper. But at a certain point, it became that I started maybe making drawings and changing drawings into lithographs, and then changing those into big collage drawings, and then from that I started doing stained glass, and then from that really I started then making sort of sculptures out of things. But this is just stuff that I made. I was thinking about being an artist and what it means, or what it means making printmaking and stuff like that, and I thought, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's just but it is one of the few endeavors you can do. So this is actually like that. I made this print, and then I put plastic on the paper on the floor, and then I covered it with clay, and then I made this sculpture from that. So that's a very direct way of using it, because I think printmaking is a great way to generate things, and it's a great way to think about the last century, we think about printmaking and photography as being very influential in painting and sculpture and sort of the way we think. But I always think printmaking is really perfect because it taught people to think in layers. It taught people to think in a kind of deconstructed manner, that they understood that each level of something was completely abstract nothingness. It's just ink and paper. There's nothing there. There's nothing inherent in it as substance, just an oily substance on a piece of paper. But one was creating the illusion of reality out of that. And so to me, that's always a good model that you have, to step back from one's immediate circumstance or one's, what one thinks one's going on, and realize that there's no substance to it really, and therefore it can change and move. These were the prints that I made. I started making prints because in 1980 we had this show. I was part of a group called Collaborative Projects, and we had a show in Times Square called the Times Square Show, and we had a shop, and in the shop people could make things, and I wanted to make T-shirts, and this friend of mine taught me how to make T-shirts, and so then sort of out of that I made prints, and then this was the first print I showed ever as artwork, and because of that a publisher came and asked me if I wanted to make prints, and it was Bill Goldston of ULAE in Long Island, and I was very suspicious. I didn't want to let him in my house. I didn't know who he was. I thought, leave me alone. I just can make my own prints on my floor. And my friends said, shut up. That's who makes prints with Jasper Johns and Rauschenberg. Don't act so crazy. But And so when I went there, I made one print before this, but then they gave me this plate that was 6 feet by 4 feet and said, okay, now make an etching. And I had gone to community shops and made etchings like about this big before. But this was the first one I made of there, which was, Bill came and he said, just bring yourself, like don't bring any conceived notions and stuff. And I'm pretty controlling, so those things make me nervous. But I brought a casting material. So we cast my head and we lay it on stones, and then we layered up, putting hair in Xeroxes and transferring it. And, for me, it was the first real time in my life where I really felt supported was in this print situation. And it was a collaborative situation, like people were helping you sort of manifest your vision. And so for me, it really gave me a tremendous freedom. Like I had stopped drawing for probably 6 or 7 or 8 years before that, and then I sort of got the confidence to start trying to draw again. And it's such a nice environment, the print world, because it's it's often very collaborative. People help each other. It's better if you help each other, like you can have better results helping one another. And it's a small world, so it's very nice that you can know many of the people. Like I knew Andy's work before I ever met him, and you can know who the printers are. The printers all know what lineage of printmaking they're in. And it's a very eccentric slice of life, that it's not for everyone. And many artists are great artists, but have like absolutely zero interest in printmaking. And the people that do have interest in printmaking are completely endlessly fascinated by it. And can kind of, because it has a technical aspect to it, and then it has this just endless freedom and also endless amount of space where you can learn something in it. This is stuff. These prints, and also like it has a kind of fetishistic aspect of it because it is fussy. It has this like repetition that people like about, a lot of artists like this sort of attention deficit, like fussiness of being able to like make strokes over and over and over and over and over again as a way to kind of be out of one's mind or out of oneself or out of place or something. And, but for me, it's something that I've gotten to learn about not going a little bit to schools actually has taught me a tremendous amount because the students are working really hard actually, and often the students know much more technically than I do about making things, and they're attentive. But also I've learned in working in shops, but I teach also, and since I teach and I don't quite know what I'm doing, I'm always trying to make up weird ways to teach, weird ways to do this. So this was like a print that I made as a line etch and then put in tone by sandpaper. So it's like a poor man's aquatint. Aquatint is the one way of making things that you get a continuous tone, a gradation. It's very beautiful. So I'm always trying to think about the sort of dumbest homemade way of making things that you can imagine, or using or being inspired by, just very simple ways that you learned in elementary school how to make things, how to cut up a piece of paper and ink it up and slap it on another or something or other. And then this, for me, this was, this is a weird talk because then I got nervous, right? Or I lost myself right when I walked into this hole, dark hole. But this was in 1994, I got asked to Alfred University to be like an artist in residence there for a couple of weeks, and I think I extended my stay for another month or so. And then right after that, I went to Mass College of Art, and a girl at Alfred taught me how to make photo etching and photolithography. And then when I went to Mass College of Art, I stayed there. I think I was supposed to go there 2 weeks, and I stayed about 6 weeks. And I went to the Peabody Museum and drew the dead animals, they had a collection of dead animals, and pieced them together and made them into lithos. And this really, for me, is in a certain way like a big moment of change in my work, where I could start making things that were like 30 feet long and stuff, and that I could also use images from lithography and from photo etching, that piecing them together like collage, that they could be changing all the time. So it's like a repertoire theater, or comic books or something like that, that everything you could keep reworking. And in a certain way that relates to my father's work, this idea of like keep changing the relationship between octahedrons and tetrahedrons. But like for me, like this is similar. It was a piece that same year that I made of crows, and called Jersey Crows, because all these dead crows fell out of the sky one day. And but I made a body, 2 feet, and 2 wings. But then you could take them and reconfigure them each time differently. And to me, this is a nice thing. It's that you get to animate inanimate objects, and get that they each have like a variation of life, but can still, make like sort of large whole conglomerates or be single individual things. Here I went to Pittsburgh, and I drew animals, dead birds from their collection of birds in the museum that lived in that area. And then first they were made like this as, and I guess this is what I'm really interested in. It's like, first I made etchings of birds. So this is like about, I don't know, it's 16 feet long or something like that. And then I Xeroxed the birds. And then from the Xeroxes, I made rubber stamps. This is like, maybe like technical things, but rubber stamps. And from the rubber stamps, I pulled molds off of them, and then I made very flat pieces. So these were blankets that I made from those images. But then I made flat metal pieces from that, and then I could configure them like this and make very large wall pieces. And so I think that's really when I first started doing this. And so this is a wall piece. So for some reason, this is in the cafeteria at the Whitney in New York now, which I thought is really a weird idea, because it's really like a bunch of dead birds. And for me, it was really based on seeing the sort of horrific images of slaves in slave ships, this sort of lining people up like that. And when you go into natural history museums, you open up these drawers, and there's just these lines of endless dead birds like that. But so I think it's funny that it's in the cafeteria. But, so these are all like little birds, and then they're just on 1/4-inch bronze or something, and then with a point out the back. But it means that you can endlessly reconfigure. Oh, and then I made a little book out of it. You can take the same information and endlessly reconfigure it. And, it's the same in printmaking, that you go over and over, like you would address a play, you make your initial thing, and then you go back. And, I mean, if you're a really great artist, maybe you can just, like Picasso or somebody, just go like that in your sleep, and then it's really fabulous. But somebody like me, I usually make about 20-something states or something in an etching. And now I try to figure out like weirder, faster ways to do things, because it's a good thing to do things a little bit. It's expensive at other people's expense. But this is the same thing. Like those were prints that I made in Pittsburgh also of animals that turn white in the winter or are white, and the strategy, and it was sort of a joke, because the strategy about it was like that things are white to show that they're dangerous or to show that they want to disappear. And so, but when you make an etching, when you're drawing something white, then it turns black in the etching. But then the same thing, like I put plastic down on the etchings and then made little animals in porcelain to go with them. And these were ones where James Brown, who's an artist who has lived in Mexico for many years, he invited me to Oaxaca, where there are very good printmakers in Oaxaca. And he, for his children, would go out into the fields and find dead animals, and then he'd put them in big egg jars with formaldehyde, go to the drugstore and buy formaldehyde, which is, I don't think, something we can do here, but it's an alcohol, so it'd have like snakes and bunnies and frogs, and I made a collaboration with a friend, Susanna Moore, and this was another print. This was a print from Harlan and Weaver in New York, where my cat died, and I had really wanted to make an image of myself holding my cat like a pieta for several years, and I had a friend of mine make a photograph of that, but it looked sort of like happy, roly-poly, middle-aged woman with my cat sort of sitting there pissed off, and and it didn't work. And I thought it's always a good lesson in making art, because you can't. Sometimes it corrects your delusional thinking. Sometimes it lets you just go flying around being delusional for days and years on end, and other times it goes no. But then when my cat died, I thought, okay, this is my moment, and I took my cat and brought it on my bicycle wrapped up in my basket to my print publisher on Canal Street, and then I lay the cat on the plate so that I could, get the right proportions. And then I made this print of my cat. And then this was another cat print, but this was a joke because it was for the Pollock Krasner Foundation, and they asked me if I'd make a print for them, and Pollock and Krasner were very good friends of my parents, and but somehow I thought the stupidest thing I could do on earth for this abstract, foundation was to make a picture of kittens, so I did that. But these are all prints I made at Harlan and Weaver. And for me, I've had the opportunity to work in schools making prints, work with publishers, and then also hire people to publish. This was made at a school, began at a school. And then these are the lithos, that deer and the other big one. Then I made figures to go with them, but each time the figures could be completely changed. I just drew a friend of mine standing up, and then could cut her up and break her arms, and which you can do in collage and in printmaking much easier than when you try to do them again. Then I went and cast her body, and then I would do that, make her move in different directions. But it's much more, it's very stiff, and on paper, it doesn't bother you that there are parts of one's elbow missing or something. Your brain just fills it in, but in a sculpture, so that's the sculptural version of, say, that drawing, which came after the drawings. And for me, a lot of, if you look at a lot of printmakers, like John's or many painting printmakers, and you see that their paintings are coming out of their printmaking, that it's evident in how they're thinking, and this sort of thinking in section and thinking in layers is all happening beforehand, years beforehand in their printmaking. But all of these drawings came out from making lithographic drawings. These are from Mexico. So this is the same thing. All of those wolf stuff, I went on a sort of a bender of wolves things for a couple of years, and these sort of fairy tale stuff. But it really came from someone asking me to be in some show, and they wanted, like, for artists to think about what would be good for the future of their area or their town, as if, like, I should have the faintest idea, or that you should care, particularly. Like, towns and things are living organisms that have their time and necessity, and then sometimes that goes away or it doesn't go away. But it, you know, there was this moment for a while where people thought artists are going to, like, save the day or something like that. But the guy, for some reason, had a picture from Gustave Doré of a Little Red Riding Hood and the wolf. And to me, I was really surprised because they were the same size, essentially, you know, like a young girl and a wolf. And then I thought, well, that can be your future. You can have, you know, like a gang of girls or a pack of wolves. And so then it sort of went. But and then this was, you know, just the image of the Red Riding Hood and the grandmother coming out of the wolf. And then the other ones with the naked woman coming out of the wolf was just sort of the same image. It was just like to see what it looked like, just a person doing that. And these are all, you know, but I love this idea that you can just keep reconfiguring and changing and letting it reveal what it means to you. You know, like, I'm always against this thing in school that you're supposed to know what you're doing, because I thought you certainly don't need to know what you're doing to be alive, you know, and, you know, like, you can just show up, you know, and you can just show up for your work. And, you know, and sometimes after the fact, it, you know, it reveals itself to you, or you can see how it has connections to things you're interested in at a given moment, or that you have, you know, things that interest you over long periods of time, or that, you know, to me, I always thought it's saving my life and protecting me or something like that. But, you know, but that's much more often in hindsight. You know, that you have an impetus to do something like this. I had, the Modern Museum came and asked me if I wanted to make a show of prints, of my prints when they were in Queens, and they said that I could have a billboard. And I got really excited because I thought, oh, that's really like a coup to be able to make a billboard. And I thought of Henri Rousseau's paintings of, you know, like the tiger or lion eating the white antelope, or these, you know, this one animal catching another. And, you know, and then I started thinking about how lots of animals leave the planet being eaten. And then I was thinking about how that's maybe a good way to think about, like, how to get out of your ego, or how to get, like, free of yourself or something like that. But then I made these sort of corny prints, a little bit like Currier and Ives prints, you know, that it says on the bottom who the publisher is and what address it was published and the name, like, and that all that, those things are in the image, which is, you know, like, something that was interesting to people in the 19th century. And this is also for me when I made those little Alices in porcelain, and then you know, the technology changed, and you could do it's not rapid prototyping of it, but you could cut it. You know, they could scan things and cut them. And at first it was very, very crude. Now it's a much more sophisticated way to work. But, you know, so that one is at least 5. This was the only picture I really have of it now. That this was after the Hurricane Irene. But all of these pieces were made small and then scanned and made large. And so to me, this is also something like printing, or, you know, making... I think also for me what printmaking is so nice about too, besides that it's endless, is that there's a distance in it. You know, I don't really like, you know, making hand-drawn things and having, there's something like too vulnerable about it to me now, like to make things by hand and have that like floating out in the world or something like that. I like that besides that you can make a multiple of something or multiple images of something, I like that your mark is distanced. And that it gives you something that your own hand can't, even though it comes from your hand. And, you know, to me, being an artist is really essentially only about having your own experience, you know, that it's having the experience of making, it's the process of making that, you know, I tried to convince somebody once to make a show where I made these boxes and I just put all the things I had made in the boxes and with a lid on, you know, a plexi on top, and, you know, as if like that's the byproduct of being an artist. But being an artist is really located in your own pleasure of doing an own discovery. You know, because the rest of what happens in the universe, for the most part, you have extremely little control over. And, you know, and to be an artist, you really have to essentially be deeply engaged in your own experience. You know, that's the only thing that can hold you. But you can kind of take it and you know, essentially it's just like turning rocks around or something. You can keep turning them and letting them have all different expressions. And, you know, someplace in that you know, maybe find yourself. Or you get rid of yourself or something. And this one too, like this goes back to the thing of making rubber stamps. Like, so I made polymer plates that were used in, you know, printing newspapers and stuff, and I had them raise the line, and then I hammer those into clay, and then sometimes I redraw the clay so you get a deeper line, and then I pull waxes off of it. But so it's the same thing, like using a print into a material and then lifting it and making it a three-dimensional, you know, this here is a three-dimensional object. But, you know, it keeps your hand in a way that you can't keep. You know, like for me, I couldn't make a large drawing and have the same intimacy, even though I draw, like for people, I always draw one-to-one and stuff, but there's certain things I couldn't do and keep myself in it, keep your touch in it, which you can do either through printmaking or through blowing things up, but blowing up lines. But this way you can make similar things just from rubber stamps and stuff, and then you can, you know, put them together in 20,000 different ways. So like this is that same image, but as a necklace, like these little star necklaces. And also for me too, jewelry is something very important that also has something to do with printmaking, which all have something to do with like making amulets or talismans or spell. You know, printmaking has some, you know, besides it being generative, it has something about intention or prayer or making magic. And jewelry has very much that same function in our lives, you know, that is, and all of this does in the sense that, you know, it's metals from outer space, from the beginning of time, coming down and splattering on the earth, and then stones and things being made in the pressure of the earth, and then it's these things that are these collaborations between, you know, all of the history of the universe and like the heavens and earth. You know, so every time you're doing something with metals, it has, you know, it has that primordial beginning to it. These are ones that are like these monoprints, but in bronze, you know, where I'm printing or working in clay, incising clay the way I would make an etching, and then cutting them out, and then these were leafed. This is like, I made a couple of years of having fantasies of making churches and things, but nobody wanted them. Nobody wanted me to make a church, but I was happy to make them. Oh, and then this is sorry, if you're not interested in printmaking, it's probably really, really boring. but tough luck. These are polymer plate prints, which I just learned about a couple of years ago, and they give you. I started making. The thing is also, like, if you do printmaking, like people say, oh, you're a sculptor, or you're this or you're that, you can have this like other completely secret life that like not very many people see, and you can kind of be these different people in different sections of your life. And in polymer plate printing, they have this thing to come out really poorly in a certain way, or like they pick up, the plates pick up all this noise. Like I've just made photographs of my assistants holding things and then layered them, but then when they go to print it, this like other weird stuff comes. And the thing is that a lot of making art is incredibly generous to you. Like the universe in general that you exist is generous to begin with, but printmaking and these art making can be, remind you how can be a good model for remembering that one can be grateful in life to be given so much, because all this noise and all this stuff happens, and you can always just say like, oh, this is terrible, this is ruining my life, like I have to get rid of all of this bad stuff. Or you can say, oh, aren't I really lucky and blessed today that there's this noise there that I could never make up. So it's always a collaboration, not only between you and a printer or you and the press, but it's also always between you and the universe. And I think that, the thing about art is that often it's, it's like you have an impetus to do something, a desire to do something, and that's just, like an idea. And, some people very clearly follow that idea, but for me, it's really that you have an idea which is just like a kind of knee-jerk, something like falls into your skull, and but for me, it's often the most interesting when it starts falling apart. Like you're working on something and then it's not anything how you want it to be, and you're miserable. And then you get to start having an experience. So it's like a relationship. It's not all just like, I imagine this is all going to be like this. It's like all of a sudden there's a person or there's, some unruly material, and it starts interacting with you in a way that is unexpected, and then either you can take that as really a blessing or a curse, and it's just, that's your choice. And so for me, I always think like every time something doesn't come out right, I just always go, lower your standards, let go of, like you have a choice. Do you want to be miserable or you want to be happy? Like just let go of your idea, and be happy. And for me, I'd much rather be a happy person. I can't say that I am all the time, but in general, I prefer that version of life. So these are like that, that I made that big, and then these were scanned and blown up this big, and then, fought with and stuff to get somewhere that I like them. And this was nice because this was, I knew a woman who came from Detroit. Came from Detroit. And she had cancer, and she was having an exhibition of her work. And when she was there, she was wearing a man's suit, and she had very short hair from chemo. And I saw her, and I thought, oh, I really want to draw her as an annunciation. And, and part of it was like she reminded me of the painting of Frida Kahlo sitting after she's cut all her hair off, and wearing a man's suit. But then I thought, like, oh, that's such a weird idea because, she was at least my age then. And, I thought that's like a weird idea for annunciation. But then after a while, I thought it actually really made sense because that's what it's like being an artist. Like you're just there minding your own business, and something comes into you, and tells you to pay attention to it. Like something becomes evident or important or significant to you, or keeps rattling itself in front of you. And then, you sort of go, okay. You know, and I always love the Virgin Mary with the Holy Ghost sort of like, you know, saying hail, but also, you know, going like, stop it, go away from me. You know, like, get away from me. And a lot of times when you have ideas for things, you know, you don't want them, or it can take, you know, sometimes I try to hide from them and it takes years for me to do work that, you know, if I had just done it to begin with, you know, either maybe it needed more cooking inside, or maybe I could have just gotten it over with earlier or something like that. But it is this thing about saying yes to what you're given, and every artist and every person is given something different and unique. And so it's not to, you know, the best thing you can do as an artist is to follow what you're given specifically. And sometimes it fits with the rest of things in the world, sometimes it doesn't. You know, like, often I make this stuff and I go like, oh, couldn't you make things slightly less corny looking, or better sculpted or something. Like, I stopped making sculpture sort of a couple years ago because I was so sick of my bad sculpting. But the more you're actually willing to trust what you're given and honor it, the better chance you have. But these are all things made from rubber stamps of moths and stars, and then put with branches or put with lath. You know, every time somebody knocks down a building on my block, I go get all the lath I can. This is just stuff. This I liked making. This was something for San Francisco Art Museum, and not the modern museum, but the one in the park. And they had a painting of colonial girls, like, because there's not so many like 1700s colonial paintings, and it was of two young girls, and then I copied it, and that was something that was like made in a computer raised, and then I made them sort of floating in this cardboard box structure in a room it had like raindrops all hanging on the ceiling, but it was sort of like these two girls flying in outer space or something like that. You know, but like these things are all things, you know, they're just certain patterns, like those are drawings of wood, really, and then you cut out and make them into eyes, and you can keep turning them around or unfolding them or letting them have, you know, it's like facets or something in a ring that you keep finding out what all the different possibilities of something are. These were all like visionary animals and visionary people. And then because of printmaking, it enabled me to making these big lithos, it enabled me to use them as cartoons for making stained glass painting. That's actually what I showed in Italy now, ones that I had made several years ago, because you just work flat on a light table, you know, you put your drawing down and then you copy it in glass. And, you know, stained glass is such a, also incredibly rich historical field to move around in. And these are things I'm making now. So I made these drawings sort of my sister. We went to SCAD. I have this friend, Valerie Hammond, who we teach printmaking together. And we went down to SCAD and tortured them for a while making prints. And, you know, we'd come for like 5 days, and they would keep us always from 8:30 in the morning till 11:30 at night in this shop. And then we'd work, and then we'd go back home, and then we'd come back a couple months later. But I made these breath prints of this, and then she was making laser cut things. And I thought, oh, I don't like those. I don't know what to do with them. I'm not interested in that you can just cut those lines like that. And then one day I got interested in it, and I started making, taking those drawings, taking those lines and having them cut and then painting on them. And then these are other things. Because of that, it allowed me then to start using those to hammer into clay and pull waxes off of them. And this is, like, these are necklaces, but it's the same thing. It's making etchings, but it's etching into wax and casting it. So it's very, all the technical skills that you use in jewelry making, you can move very easily now because of computers and things. You can move sideways and into all these different, like this is I made little pins of clouds and starbursts and stuff, but then I scanned that and I could blow it up 9 feet. And that's a very different thing, but it keeps that intimacy of hand, which if I tried to make something big, it wouldn't have that same feeling. So this is the little version, and then that's a different version of a bird. And this is the same thing. I made this as a litho, and then I put a clay bed, and I copied my drawing. I just put my drawing on the clay and redrew it with a pencil so I could get all my own line work into it. These are stained glass. So for me, it's that the thing that printmaking affords you is not only to have this like very intimate experience, like very super private personal experience, but also you can, where I try to get the students to think about is that like you can go in any direction, and something like an etching is really a physical cut in the universe, like you're cutting into through a piece of metal, but because of that line has such a strong integrity, you can blow it up 20 feet and it will hold. Like you can take an etching this big and make it tremendous. This is the same thing. These are drawings that I made small and made them into rubber stamps and then made jewelry off of them. And you couldn't, like I couldn't do that without doing it that process. There's more of that junk. And then this is the same. These were rubber stamps of bunnies and hoarfrosts. And that, I think, is a big one. But they were made from, like making a little drawing of a bunny that big. And then these were blown up. It had to fit on a flatbed, so I think it's no longer than 15 feet or something like that. That one's smaller. Also, I was saying, like I made that print 2 years ago, this one, of a turkey sitting in a tree, like a turkey in a bower. And it's a la poupée, so each area is inked up a different color. And we made a couple, and then everybody got sick of printing them because they thought they took too long. But, I thought like a turkey is I live upstate, so a turkey is like this profoundly wonderful thing. You probably have a lot of turkeys in Detroit too, running around maybe. But, and Benjamin Franklin wanted to have turkeys as the symbol of America. And, they have this really archaicness and modesty to it. And, like why one does something or why one is attracted to doing something, like who knows? I came here and I've been making etchings of corn. And, I got it in my head like, oh, I want to make like a cornucopia. and coming here, like to have the, you know, something about bountiful, like appreciation and love of being on this planet. You know, because my work when I was younger was, you know, people would say, well, it's very abject, or it's much more angst and fraught with lots of problems and stuff. And I have a friend, Meme Berzenberger, who's a poet, and she's also happens to be the wife of the great American artist Richard Tuttle. But she taught me about going towards love, like going towards, and sometimes that appears as being sentimental or sentiment, but which I think people are afraid of, to express care and love of you know, how lucky we are to be here. And it really changed, you know, like for her, it really changed my life and world, that I started, my work started going much more towards what I care about in my daily life, or I see in my daily life. And so this is also, I think I have like a couple more minutes, but these are tapestries that, this is a cartoon, like a traditional cartoon, like I used also for the stained glass, but so I made lithographs and just to use, to make drawings, and then I cut them up and made them into these patterns, and then they were scanned in computers. And so they're the same ones that I used to make these stained glass paintings, but I cut them out and then we scanned them in a computer and then we worked on them as a digital print, and then they're woven like this as tapestries. But to me, it was somehow very significant to make something in its own scale. You know, sometimes you can blow them up and they're okay because they keep this intimacy, but sometimes it's important that each scale has its own integrity. And you know, and also because it's just collage, like you have endless, like if you print a whole bunch of lithos, you have a whole bunch of just material, just stuff you can move around and play with. So this, I've been working with these people, I guess the first one was, that was the drawing, the original, and then that was the finished tapestry. And these I was asked by Magnolia Press in Berkeley, California, and they're really woven in Belgium on jacquard looms, which were, you know, very important looms, and one of the models kind of early computer, you know, like a card system for making something happen. But to me, they were originally like some attempt between like the medieval, like the idea of spectacle in the Middle Ages and in the Roaring Twenties and in kind of French and hippie art, and me, I guess. That like, and here, you know, like how here in Detroit you have all of this great Art Deco, you know, that I wanted them to have be like archaeolites or something like that. And then they, you know, go their own convoluted way. These are also the same thing, but them printing them on ceramic tile. These are a bunch of other ones. But these are all like those animals are all the animals that I drew in '94 at Harvard. So it's nice if you have, like you keep things close to you. That one I don't like anymore. You know, but just each material, it's different. Like this is different than the lithograph of it, but it also can hold and have an intimacy about it. These are just a couple of prints. Oh, and then this is another thing that's really great. You can take your prints and then make them into scarves and sell them. Because it's real, and blow them up. I mean, that's the thing, like that's a little print. I was making that as demo plates, you know, like showing my assistants how you could use the hard ground as a stop out, you know, and, you know, but then I took the image of that because it's an etching, you can blow it up big and have like another life, because it's also really nice making things. It's nice making, you know, a big part of art is making presents, you know, and it's good to have some presence around. And that one now, like I got asked by Gobelin in France to make a really hand-woven tapestry, which, they take like 7 or 8 years. Some of them take about 15 years. So this is, I think, their Xerox of my little print. And then that's them, when they started to weave. I don't know how far into it they are now. Oh, I'm supposed to stop in 3 minutes. So these were done at the Fabric Workshop, which also you guys should, if you're interested in printmaking stuff. They were started by Kippi Straub in Philadelphia, and she invited hundreds of artists to come and make prints and make printed things, printed cloth. And a lot of artists wanted to make art, and I thought, I don't care about making art. I want to make like blankets and quilts. And, my whole original idea was that, and dolls, that, I wanted to be an artist so I could have things at Macy's. Like I wanted to be an artist so I could make things for people's houses, or try to have a nice life, because in a way it is just about that. That's not very good. This is some other weird kick I'm on now, which is just like making small little sculptures. That's me and my husband. And this is also from a small print that I made making demo plates at NYU, and then I made it at UNT in Denton in North Texas. But then I took those and had them cut in wood and then cast them into bronze. And blew them up a bit so that they have that same weirdness to them. Is there more polymer prints? Oh, and those are the same, like, making the drawings 3D. This is my secret life. I don't really show those so much, but I make them. But the same thing, like then I made the, I had the laser cut, made for hammering it into clay and making them into clay, but then you can also use it as a rubbing, so you can keep your hand back into it, put your hand back into it in a different way. I think that's the end. I don't know what these things are here for. Oh, that's the end. Oh, I like that. This is partially because of Endi, or because of Yugoslavia, that they made these incredible, like if you go online and you look up Yugoslavian World War II memorials, you will learn more about sculpture than you have learned, in years about the potential of sculpture. And Endi had made a print of this, which I had seen, but I had seen this image, of these memorial that's like hands coming out, abstracted sort of hands coming out of the earth. And I was so inspired by that I made this sculpture, and now this is it big. But I meant it like a wave with water glistening on it. So I sort of know that I'm a little bit boring today, but tough luck. But I think if you think of the work and you see that how you can keep moving and reconfiguring and changing medium, that you can learn a lot from doing that. You can have a wonderful experience and wonderful life from doing that. So that's all I know. My assistant, this one I like. That's the end. So that's the same thing. It's making rubber stamps, and then now I'm making it into a pigeon. So thank you.